You're listening to Southern Miss Radio. It's time for News You Need. News You Need is a look at current events and how they affect the college community and beyond. And now here's the host of News You Need, Dr. Ed Simpson.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to yet another exciting edition of News You Need. This is the show where we talk to the best human beings in the whole world, which is our USM students and the occasional professor.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Hale. And so why are we here? This is the show where we talk about what our USM students are talking about that's in the news. We'll suggest some headlines, maybe talk about some issues that come up that are important to us. And the reason we care is that the best way to understand what's happening in your society is to read and understand and follow the news. So we talk about that. The idea is that as a member of a community, as a city, a county, a state, a nation, you need to make decisions as a citizen, and you need to know the issues in order to make those decisions. So that's why we're here. That's why we talk about it. As usual, we do have a returning panel this week. Thank you, guys. Great discussion last week, so I suspect we'll continue along some of the same veins. So if you would, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you and what's going on.
Sure. I'm Skylar Ingus Barker. I am the Tuesday, Thursday show host for Southern Miss Today, the radio show. Hopefully you've heard me.
Yeah, both of you out there, hopefully.
Hi, my name is Greta Graves. I'm a graduate student here working on a master's degree in communication, and I am a GA with the Roy Howard Community Journalism Center and USM Speech and Debate team.
That's amazing, and that's awesome. And at some point, I do want to talk a little bit about the Howard Center. That's very cool. Dr. Hale?
I was just kind of walking by, and someone brought me in and gave me a mic and said, could you tell us about the news? And I thought, but is there any news right now? I feel like it's so slow. I just don't know what we even be talking about.
Yeah. Well, that's how we roll around here. We just drag randos out of the hall and say, hey, get on the radio. That's awesome. So what are our USM students talking about this week? Now, I know you guys are a little older. You're in the master's program as opposed to undergrad. So maybe your contact is a little more narrow, but
We still have friends.
there you go. So what are our USM students talking about? What's big?
The Super Bowl. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. I barely know that the Super Bowl, I think it's this weekend.
Yeah, this Sunday.
so.
And who's playing?
The Eagles versus the Chiefs.
And do we
right.
care?
Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team versus the Eagles.
Oh.
The other team.
That's the
right.
only
The
reason I
other
know about
team.
it.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Okay, so our students care?
Some
Yeah,
of them do,
no,
for sure.
no, I would say so. Yeah, I mean we're in the South, of course we care about the Super Bowl.
Okay, all right.
If nothing else, for the commercials, and maybe we get a glimpse of a celebrity
guess.
on a fan cam.
I
Well-
believe Kendrick Lamar is doing the
Yeah.
halftime show. That should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, that'll
Oh.
be fun.
Wow.
The Grammys is also something people are talking about. Speaking of Kendrick Lamar,
That's right.
I believe he won Best Rap Album. I may be wrong on that.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, his most popular track won 5 Grammys.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Oh yeah. No,
Well,
if I could make that much money and get that much fame off of dissing somebody, I absolutely would.
do it. Go for it.
Well, let's make a collaboration.
Let's do it.
I'll
we
diss
can
the show
totally
and
diss somebody. I'm
you
all
can have
in that.
50% of the profits.
Gotcha. Now, I did hear that, I think I heard, Beyonce won Country Album of the Year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she did.
Cowboy Carter.
How are we feeling about that? How's our USM students care about the Beyonce, Swiftie, the slight that she got at the
I was
CMA?
pining for Chris Stapleton to win that one, honestly. I'm not even a huge country fan. I didn't really grow up listening to country. I don't listen to it a ton now. But, yeah, no hate. I
Interesting.
mean, she's awesome. She's awesome. But that's not who I was gunning for.
Skylar, you're a music guy.
Yeah. It was unexpected at first because Beyonce, I didn't really register as a country artist. But Beyonce has done a lot of great things, and it's no surprise that she swept.
Yeah, I mean, her name has a lot of pull already
Yeah.
just by itself. It doesn't really matter what she's working on.
Well, and I saw a picture, I assume it's true, that Taylor gave her the Country Music Award.
I
that
think
she was the
that's
presenter.
Correct. I believe
That
that's
Taylor
right.
was. Somebody can let us know if that. Pretty sure that picture is accurate. A lot of folks talking about this. Anyway, well, there you go. So our students do care about these things. You're nodding. I'm sure. I believe it's Super Bowl for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess. I can't get into it. I probably won't even watch it this year.
Really?
I do like the ads. Some of the ads are good. I think Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch is coming back with something,
As always.
as always. So that's interesting.
Okay, I think what's important to ask here is if you're not going to be watching the Super Bowl, what are you going to be doing?
My school stuff, I suspect. That's
Oh,
about
that'd be
where
a
I'm
great
at.
time to
That's-
go get groceries.
That's about where I'm at right now in my life.
Do all your chores then, all your work then. Nobody's there to bug you.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know what I'll be doing, but I'm sure it'll be fun and exciting. What else are our students talking about? Anything non-sports, non-music that our students are chatting about?
I mean, I don't know how much students are talking about it, but Trump did make some posts on Truth Social about the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, so that was actually my number one I was going to ask. So before the election, our students were very engaged in the Hamas,
Yeah.
Israel war, all that kind of stuff going on. And President Trump this week then did say, hey, I have a plan. I want the U.S. to take over the Gaza Strip and turn it into the French Riviera of the Mideast.
Yeah,
So-
he's turning the Gaza Strip into the Gaza Strip Mall. Is how I've heard people say.
Yeah.
It.
So how are we feeling about that? How's our are our USM students aware, and are they chatting about that at all?
I don't think everybody is totally aware. Honestly, I think a lot of us have gotten to the point where we are actively not reading the news because it's
Yeah.
it's
See.
just a lot.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. So the Republican strategy, and they were very clear about this, about the flooding the zone strategy. Let's do a lot of things very quickly, so much so that Democrats and various watchdogs can't really react. But I think one of the consequences of that has also been this flooding of news that eventually has just turned off a lot of people. They're just like, you know what? I don't care. I just cannot keep track of all of this.
Yeah.
I think that's very dangerous. And I think those of us who are here in this particular show would probably acknowledge that that's pretty dangerous. But that's where a lot of people are, where they're just like, you know what? I didn't even know that was happening because it was one of 55,000 other things that were happening all at the
Yeah.
exact same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does feel like a very dystopian time. It feels like we're on the edge of something. But to be fair, I think everybody has always felt like that. Every generation has their kind of feeling of turmoil. And
Well,
I think
that's really, I'm glad you brought that up, because we at this table on this show, you can't see it, both of you at home, put down your beers and you can kind of imagine. We have three generations here in this show today. Brent, you could be my son, I believe.
I believe I am the exact same age as your actual son.
My son is 34.
Yeah, I am 34.
My God. And Greta, you are,
I am 21.
oh my God.
I'm 24.
Oh, you're old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Yeah, so we have three generations that sat around here at the table. So you said the word dystopian. I will tell you, I've been through a bunch, but this is nothing like I've ever seen, felt, imagined. Brent?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so and I was going to save this for later, but let's just jump into it. Huh? So what it feels like is that we are moving from a rule of law to a rule of one. A constant drumbeat of my way, my way, my way. And then the system is kind of creakily reacting, as in, okay, this group is going to file a lawsuit over here to try to stop this. This other group is going to file a lawsuit to try to stop that. Well, then it takes a long time to get up to the Supreme Court, because the current administration has made it plain that's where they're going. And then the ongoing angst over the court. So in the first time in my lifetime, we have a hard right court. So that's what I mean.
So you mean kind of this centralization of power and this kind of one-sidedness of power?
Well, it's the idea that I grew up, I'm an old guy. I am 61, so I'm not as old as I look. I know I look 79, but I am actually 61. But this is the first time in my life that I can certainly, that there's been no discussion of three equal branches of government.
Mm-hmm.
That was always the American way. That was the guardrails. That was what kept us in check, is that, okay, you may have somebody come into the presidency that's just kind of all over the place, but Congress would keep him or her in check. And if Congress somehow got out of whack, the Supreme Court would push him back, between the ditches. Now, that's being all challenged. And I don't recall a time, certainly in my awareness, and even as I read history, where it's been this way.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, you know what? We are. I'm looking at our engineer. We're going to keep talking. No, we're going to take a break. Okay. So, okay, first part of the semester, we're getting our signals worked out. So, sorry, Dr. Hale. We're going to pick up with Dr. Hale's generation and his take on this idea of rule of law versus rule of one after the break.
Been discriminated against because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. File a complaint with HUD. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
Visit HUD.gov/fair housing, a public service message from HUD and the National Fair Housing Alliance.
You may not realize how important 3 letters can be. For a patient who needs type A, B, or O blood, these letters can mean life, but there simply aren't enough people giving blood. Without more donors, hospitals may not have the blood needed to save lives. That's why the American Red Cross needs people to help restore the A's, B's, and O's that are depleting each day. You are the missing type patients need. Visit redcrossblood.org/missing types or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to make your donation appointment today.
And we are back. Dr. Hale, what do you think?
Yeah, just for those who are listening and didn't see what happened there, so I was about to get started, and Dr. Simpson was throwing fingers at me. I mean, he was like, "You need to stop talking." It was crazy, but anyway, we'll get on with this. So I first really started paying attention to politics around Obama, right? So this was 2008, right? And so I actually graduated high school in 2009. So this really, from the way that I've experienced politics, was the beginning of kind of our current surge in polarization, where it was like, okay, certain people hated Obama so much that there was a hard shift to the right on one side. And in response to that, there was this very hard push to the left, during the Trump years, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that emergence of polarization that we're seeing has created an environment where if one team, quote unquote, I put air quotes on that, ends up with an unbalanced amount of power, that power then starts getting really hard leveraged for various purposes. And I think this is the first time that it's really felt like one team, quote unquote again, has had a lot of power given to them, whether that be in, well, really any of the different branches, right? So they have power in the courts, in the legislature, and also, of course, in the executive office. And this is the first time that it's really felt like one team again, has been able to really push with that and say, we're going to do some stuff. And we talked about this, at the end of last semester when we were really thinking about the fallout of the election. That, in some ways, for half the country anyway, was the point. It was, you know what? We will give you all the power that we can, and you're going to make our lives better. That's the goal. That's what is hoped for. I don't personally see it happening yet, but that's kind of what the thought was. But I think that's kind of the way that I and a lot of people in my generation have experienced, is like this back and forth pull and fighting and this aggressive nature of trying to take as much power as we can for our quote-unquote team. But I'd be interested to hear, from those who maybe came in later than that, like, what is it like now?
I mean, yeah, like, I first got into, like, politics around, like, I think Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump.
So that'd be 16.
Yeah. 16. And it was crazy to me, looking at, like, the different, like, statistics and what they supported. But it was also crazier, like, to see how the public perceived it. Mm-hmm. because like I woke up, I was doing like a play somewhere, and I woke up at my director's house, and my director like checked on me, and the first thing that she said is like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I just woke up. I don't know what's happening. And it's just, it's scary knowing the things that are happening right now. And it's just a matter of like, what's going to come next and what do we need to do about it?
Yeah, my perspective on politics and is for people around my age, I think is been very bleak, sadly. The presidents and presidential candidates that I've grown up with have been so utterly disrespectful to each other that has, up until probably a year or 2 years ago, I fully had the impression that politicians are supposed to call each other names and they're supposed to be vicious and that they are supposed to have this distaste in their heart. Until getting older, I decided, you know what, maybe it is important to look at politics before I was even born and seeing how politicians treated each other, standing up saying, you know, no, Obama is a good family man. We just disagree about economic policies, and that's why I'm running against him, rather than just this hate that people have. And I think that is part of what I was saying about the dystopianness of it all is I think Skylar and I are probably kind of the first generation to see politics as something hateful and to see it as something just so constantly aggressive.
Just breaks my heart to hear you say that. But I think you're right. I think that's excellent insight. When I was your age, which was way back in the dinosaurs, and that's when nothing was the same. But yeah, we used to talk about how the political parties are basically the same, so it doesn't really matter who you vote for. And of course, that has dramatically shifted in the last 12 years. But your insight into the way we communicate, fascinating stuff. And you're exactly right. That's not how they used to communicate.
What's unique about this particular moment, though, is that a lot of the frustration isn't actually with either of the parties. I mean, literally, like today, it's with unelected folks getting their hands into the government.
That's an element of the dystopian that we've never seen before, and an element of what you're most used to seeing in Russia is the really closest analogy, where you have the billionaires brought into government, as opposed to government keeping a check on the billionaires. And that's, so again, you go back to, are we in a rule of law or a rule of one? And that is, I think, where folks are kind of wrestling with.
And then who is the one?
Yeah, right. President Trump, right? Or is he? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what everybody.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah,
on
or
it.
is he? Yeah, that's really fascinating. So Gaza Strip. So our students, and I agree. It makes and I find myself wanting occasionally to just withdraw too from the news, because it's just a constant crush. But in my view, you have to stay engaged. Gaza, our students are not quite, but they're there. They're thinking.
We're aware there's an issue, but I think it feels like, and it has been a conflict going on much longer than I think the American public has been talking about it. Yeah. And conflict within Israel and Palestine has been a thing forever.
Right.
And I think kind of the big feeling is just, it's getting worse. We don't know how to make it better. And it's always been getting worse and worse and worse. And so what can we do? It's just this feeling of hopelessness, I think.
Yeah, I totally. So another big headline has been the dismantling of the USAID office. So I think that we're looking at 10,000 or so workers around the world that have been recalled. So these are the aid workers, the folks you're used to seeing on public television shows and various fundraising efforts and that kind of stuff. Well, they're in impoverished places, giving out food, giving out medicine, all that kind of stuff. And the current administration says we don't need them. What do you think? Are students aware of this? Has this come up anywhere?
Not so much in the conversations I've had with people my age, but it's definitely something very worrisome.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge red flag when your government wants to start kind of for lack of a better term, or maybe this is the perfect term, segregating people into their poverty. Saying, like, it's not my job to pay for people in this other state to get aid because I don't need that kind of aid. And then forgetting the fact that it's all one country. We're starting to treat other states like the enemy, which is a very horrifying thought.
Which, of course, if that's the mentality, then USAID is just done, right? Because that's not even really concerned with interstate
Yeah.
issues. That's international issues. If we can't even agree to help within or between states, then who's going to help anyone in, insert country here, right?
Yeah. Well, now the other side of this, and I wonder if our students, if you hear any students taking up, the other side of this is, listen, hey, yeah, it was really thin. It was about 220,000 votes, but the country did appear to vote for put America first. So let's not spend the 30 billion or so on foreign aid. Is there a point to that or not?
I'm not sure, because to me it's just a matter of like I think we as people have like the moral obligation when someone is in trouble, when someone is hurting, when someone is in pain, to do something about it. And like it always seemed to me that that's what like America was based off of, like land of the free, home of the brave, and give me your tired, huddled masses. And it's just, it doesn't make sense.
So even at 24, did you grew up with those images?
Yeah, I grew up with this like idealization that like America was this place that like it was like the big brother. It was like someone that was going to like pick you up off your feet and then help you get a job, help you be able to like start a family, help you be able to do these things that like you've dreamed to do. Like the American dream was such a big thing that people were like parading. And then now it's literally the American nightmare. And it's just
Yikes.
yeah,
Okay.
it just doesn't seem right to me.
Well, both parties had agreed for so long that this was how you exerted American power and
Exactly.
influence, was through doing this sort of thing. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, we could discuss that, but like that was the way we exerted authority internationally. And that's just not what people wanted, and they made that clear.
Yeah, I guess. I think we probably are needing a break here. No? Okay, they're rolling us on. Yeah, and I think that, again, you guys are kind of breaking my heart a little bit. So this idea of a fundamental difference in America, and that we're seeing that, now it's been going on for a long time, but now we're seeing it, and it hurts. Is that fair?
Yeah, I have, ironically enough, with so many people stepping out against identity politics, I think we have it now more than ever, but in a way that people don't think. We are so identified with a certain party that we don't feel we can express any qualms we have with that party, or else we have to be on the other side. And I think that is part of the issue. Part of this is kind of line drawn in the sand of you have to be one or the other. If you are not a Democrat through and through, you are a Republican. And if you are not fully Republican from policy to social issues to international matters, then you have to, you must be a Democrat. So it's a very you can't sit with us kind of idea that I think is very detrimental. It's what kept me both very intrigued by politics and out of it up until college. Is I was so afraid of nailing myself to an identity that so many people just hate. It's just this feeling of everyone hating you and having to choose a side. And that's just a very scary thing, that there's no middle ground on any issue. You have to be one or the other, and you have to accept the hate that comes with it.
Wow. What are you hearing from your students?
About
Just this whole idea, this whole shift, what appears to be a shift.
what? So I think the answer that I'll give to that is the answer that most faculty would, and it's we don't hear from students because they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Politics has become such a toxic space that they just don't want to they certainly don't want to share their perspectives and opinions, right? So, being able to do that now with students is great because in most instances it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, so I think we should pause there for a second and consider that idea that in a democracy, politics has become a toxic space. Can that even exist together? Can that sentence even exist together?
Honestly, I think it's funny that you asked that question just coming from my generational perspective, because for me it's like, of course, those things are almost inherently together. And it just kind of, I think, speaks to the age.
Interesting. Well, let's, yeah, so there you go. So Gaza. Now, I did catch this on the New York Times, and I wonder if anybody caught this. I suspect our students did not. But and we are actually going to take a break. There we go. Our engineer is signaling a very, very nice hand signal.
The fingers are up.
Hurry up. There we go. So we are going to take a break, and actually we're going to pick up with perhaps a surprising headline on the other side.
When a person calls 988, they're connected to a crisis counselor.
Crisis is completely self-defined. If you're wondering if you should call, you should probably call.
A caller can expect to talk about coping skills, talk about resources, and ways to move forward beyond the call.
Call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.
This message is brought to you by Contact the Crisis Line, Contact Helpline, Mississippi Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up that from our engineer. Dr. Hale is throwing his hands up. He's done. He's just done with the whole thing.
Walking out the door.
Walking out the door. Well, that's where we found you, so we could. No, so a little bit of an interesting, surprising headline, I thought, New York Times. Senate Democrats hold the floor in overnight protest of Trump nominee. So now, back in the day, this would have been national news, major front page headlines all over, that the Democrats were up all night in basically a filibuster for what that's worth anymore, protesting a Trump nominee, and it's probably not the nominee you're thinking. But did anybody catch that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I've not gone fully into the story, but I did see that, and it's iconic behavior, honestly.
I'm sorry, you what?
It's iconic.
Yeah.
Malicious compliance to the fullest.
Yeah.
I love it. Love to see it.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings me to my next question. So after Obama's election, 2 years later, Congress turned Republican. So when he was elected, he had 2 years. Basically, he had 2 years of the same situation that Trump currently has, which is a left-leaning court, Supreme Court, a Democrat House, and a Democrat Senate. Now, most people, and what we came out of that, by the way, was Obamacare, which is the health care. In which there's a lot of conservatives that were just beside themselves over that. So the way forward, what's next, right? So I know everybody's feeling, there's nothing to do, and I want to disengage because it's all ugly and dystopian, and the dumpster fires and all that other stuff. But there is an election coming up in 2 years. Now, Dr. Hale, I have a thought. Do you have a thought?
There's an election coming up in 2 years. This is true. And all of the things that have been happening have happened in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's a long 2 years.
It is a long 2 weeks. See, I can't even get anybody to engage on this idea of, okay.
I think it's just this feeling of, like you said, it has been a long couple of weeks. And so, sadly, looking 2 years into the future, it's like we have so much life we have to live until we get there that it's hard to even plan that far ahead, which is so sad to say. 21 and 24-year-olds can't even see 2 years into their own future. But it's not that we're giving up. It's just that we have been forced to focus on these smaller goals at a time, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
The thing is, instead of taking the perspective of what's happening in the Trump-led administration is very dangerous or whatever, if someone is listening and they're like, but I really like what is happening, I voted for him because I want him to be able to make changes, right? That's what I voted for. I want to say that we should all be concerned about the overextension of executive power. That is the thing we should actually be concerned about, is that we don't have a king. We're not supposed to.
Yeah.
And that should be concerning to everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of a point I've been kind of expressing. I have a lot of Republican friends. I have a lot of Republican family. And I don't think being Republican is a bad thing inherently at all. I think that is in the traditional sense of the term. There have been really great, strong Republican politicians throughout history. However, I don't fully believe Trump is a Republican. He does not represent, other than on social matters, which are very conservative, he doesn't represent a truly definitionally Republican economic policy. He's not fully, he just doesn't fully embody the ideals of a Republican. Certainly not in terms of things like family value and just strength of character, which is what Republicans say the whole American dream is about taking up for your neighbor, which he does not do. And so I think it's trying to get to people who are Republican and saying, hey, your ideas aren't evil. They're just not being fulfilled. If the person you thought he was out there, maybe we'd be doing okay. But it's just this idea of he is not truly, like, he's gone on record going back and forth between voting for Democratic and independent people from the 90s to the early 2000s. He's gone on record in newspaper interviews around the late 90s saying, if I were to be a politician, I'd run as a Republican because, quote, those people believe anything. It's just this idea that he's not actually representing their values. And that is something that I hope becomes more apparent, but sadly it will take issues for that to be apparent.
Yeah. Well, again, beautifully stated, well stated, I think. So we're going to wrap it up here. I'm signaling our engineers we're probably running a minute or two long. So thank you again, panel. Another great discussion. I suspect that this semester we will be spending quite a bit of time on these issues. And I really think one point about separating, Dr. Hale's point is separating the content from the structure. So the content of executive orders and legislation is one thing, but the actual structure of your country is something else. And what should we be concerned with and when and how? Really good point. So thank you again, guests. Really appreciate it. This has been a production of Southern Miss Student Media. Our engineer is Kylie Keenan. Thank you, Kylie. Our videographer is Isabella Michaud. Thank you. And we will be back, I believe, next week.
This has been News You Need with Dr. Ed Simpson. News You Need airs Friday afternoon at 12:30 on Southern Miss Radio.